Tonight we will have Michelangelo. Michelangelo is a friend, is a mentor, actually, I have to tell. So very happy to host one of his speech. It will be a very interactive speech. So be prepared. We will use breakout rooms. We will have mural and what else. So be prepared on that. The topic will be systemic coaching. Michelangelo will introduce better than me. Let me just tell that Michelangelo is organizing a session, a training session in the next weeks, and for the ICP certification. And we will have a raffle to have some very highly discounted tickets to register to his session. And as I said before, but this is for people watching the recording, it's already available, the new event for November. It will be around no meetings. So if you have your agenda completely overwhelmed by meeting, like for example mine, this is your meeting, and I will be very happy to arrange this meeting just to understand how we can make it better. In the meantime, as I said, I will publish in the chat some links. We have, other than the meetup groups, we have the LinkedIn groups, so you are invited to join and to be more connected, and I will push the link in the session. We are 26. I think it's time to shut up and give the stage to Michelangelo. Thank you, Michelangelo, for sharing.
Thank you very much. This will be a very interactive session. I don't really like doing only presentations, unidirectional presentations. So please, guys, I will ask you to, for questions, and then please give your opinion and anything you might be useful for you to understand better systemic coaching or systems coaching. So just to tell you a little bit about how I ended up in doing systemic coaching. I'm doing Agile since 2005 and explored different nuances of Agile since then, and moving from Italy to United Kingdom. I decided to become a professional coach more or less in 2015, and initiated my journey with ICF, not only with Scrum and Agile coaching. And now I'm doing professional coaching pretty well, sometimes also leadership coaching or executive coaching. And by chance, doing and working as Agile coach in Agile transformations, I ended up in systemic coaching in constellations, leading by John Whittington in London, and was out of the blue, completely different kind of coaching that I was not even prepared for that experience at that time, back in the days 2016. The question for you is, what's the difference between Agile coaching and coaching, aside from the Agile coaching framework? So you probably know, the distinctions and the different coaching stances, so training, mentoring, consulting, coaching. Aside from that difference, what for you, in a few words, is the difference between Agile coaching and coaching? You can type in chat, or you can just unmute yourself. It will be very interactive webinar tonight.
Agile is incremental.
Mm-hmm.
From my perception, the difference between Agile coaching and coaching itself, it's the Agile topic that you are putting direction on the coaching, a meaning on the coaching session do you conduct.
No, that's beautiful. That's very beautiful. What else? The customer is an organization instead a human. Very nice. Cool. What other differences we can, in a few words, mention about, say about coaching and Agile coaching? Employing the coachee to explore his or her own solutions. Okay. I do believe it refers to coaching, not only Agile coaching, maybe. That's cool. Okay.
Agile, that has to have the same meaning as adaptive. So we don't have the prescribed method. We adapt to the person or organization we want to coach, right?
Okay. Change can be in a different field, not connected with Agile. There is a very little to no professional coaching, no talking about coaching here, like in a sport coaching, in Agile coaching. Nice. Okay. Well, you can read the chat as well. There are a lot of ideas here. Very nice. So, move forward. Let me share with you something on Mentimeter, and there is a question right here that I want to eventually to try to answer here. Let's see if we can create a cloud from, yeah, there you go. Fantastic. Let's see what happens tonight. This is a social experiment, as I relationship misalignment where humans lack of expert everywhere. Well, keep it short. Interactions, technical debt. What else? Let's see. Humans, hierarchy, lack of alignment, people interactions, world. Very good. Amazing. The wish for certainty. Something embedded in the human being, maybe. Okay, very nice. Cool. Well, you can keep up, sharing your ideas. We can collect at the end and then maybe share in social network on slides the results for this cloud. Particularly, I want to, at this point, highlight one thing about the concept of systems, because you are here because you want to know more about systems and systemic coaching, and the word systems actually comes everywhere. And one of you at the beginning of this this webinar just said, oh yeah, essentially I want to know more about systems thinking, and this is another, I'm not saying a buzzword, but another things that we need to bring, we need to bring into play in our if we want to address what systemic coaching and systems coaching is. We have another thing that I want to focus on in general, because most of you in this social experiment just mentioned, of course, misalignment, lack of alignment, emotion, expectations, and problems brought by people, right? So most of you maybe work as a Agile coach, as a Scrum Master, or just as a coach, or involved in Agile transformations at some point. So if we focus on what we consider a dysfunctional team, might be an Agile initiatives or transformations. If you don't like the word transformation, think just whatever you like. And where misbehaviors, lack of trust, lack of responsibility are in place. If I ask you a question, so what would you do as a coach? What would be your first thing that you do as a coach? What would be your answer? So does any of you has an answer to? Just unmute yourself or just type on chat. Of course, you don't know anything about, what's going on in there. You just know that there are a lot of dysfunctions in place, or what we can, know it in the category of dysfunctions, but whatever it is. Observe the relationship. The first answer is fine. I mean, maybe why is the other one? Interfaces, I like it. Find out the background. Okay, more understanding the interactions. Here you go. We have a lot of ideas. Okay, in the meantime, you have please type down, because we will collect all the answers at the end in the chat. But I want to tell you a story, because a few years ago, I attended an interview for to work as a contractor for a large company. And they just, I didn't pass the interview because they asked these questions. You are with a dysfunctional team, what would you do? Well, my answer was more or less a collection of what you are saying here, or in general, just a shorter version of all these answers. But the answer that they expected was, you will help the product owner create the backlog, because the backlog is the first thing to do. Now, you're free to laugh and whatever you think, but that is another thing that brings me to introduce one concept. We tend to simplify too much what's going on, and complexity is everywhere, as you mentioned, right? So you can try to possibly say that, well, it's a work for humans, and we have to find the solutions without, believe that a simple framework like Scrum, or even worse, scaled agile framework or other framework, can solve all the other our issues and problems. But we tend to oversimplify things. And at some point, if I ask you the questions, what's the difference between agile coaching and coaching? You simply try to mention where one is focused on something and the other one is focused on something else. But the reality is that usually when we work with agile, our first movement when we created Manifesto or the Agile framework was to react to a problem. So there was a problem, there was something that was malfunctioning or dysfunctional, like, of course, the entire IT environment, right? Because it was copied by the industrial revolutions and silos everywhere. And we created a framework to enhance team working, and then principles that are very good principles in general, right? But we tend to oversimplify because things are not so simple. And then if you look about coaching, what we have done over 20 years, I mean, just start from the beginning of Agile and till now, you will find that exactly in the middle, there are books about Agile coaching. So yeah, someone mentioned it in extreme programming and somewhere else, but in reality, we didn't have a really understanding about how coaching was important, right? Is important to unleash, human full potential. But coaching was a very, very well-defined discipline before Agile. If we go back in 90s or end of 80s, you will find in the United States of America, but even in Europe, a lot of professional coaches very good at asking powerful questions to everyone. So coaching was already there, but didn't change the world, right? So in the first 10 years of Agile, then, famous books everywhere about Agile coaching. And then we understood that coaching was really important. But then we realized, well, coaching is not the only stance. We have other things because it comes from problem-solving approach. That was, to coping with issue. Is exactly what happened in IT environment where Agile, we were fed up about everything, just come up with something new. And then Agile was, a good answer at that time. But what's the problem? That at the same time, if you have a look about what happens in the world about systems thinking, this is an old story, because the idea of trying to understand how the world works starts even in the end of the 60s. At the beginning of the 70s, we have very good idea about first order of cybernetics, second order of cybernetics, and hard system thinking, soft system thinking. And what was the origin of all of that? Well, let me show you a slide about the systems and systemic approach. If you have a look at this slide, we have on the left side system thinking, and on the right side phenomenology, which means that we have kind of approach that usually is hard-oriented, small things, objects, very simple problem solving or cause and effect relations between things. And then by the time we move to the right, what happens, we realize that we are human beings in human systems, right? So we are not object systems. And at the middle of 80s, end of 80s, systems thinking itself was an academic research. Not only than that, we never used really systems thinking. And that's the reason why I'm fascinated by it, because after master with Open University 5 years ago, when I studied for a year, I realized that systems thinking doesn't solve any issue, but maybe might help you understanding what our idea about systems. So in general, what we have is a perception, because the systems might not even exist. That's the reality. So it's so complicated in the world that even the idea of thinking about systems is very difficult, right? But we want to manipulate systems, even though the word manipulated, we hate this word, we don't like the word. But in reality, when we try to change something, we manipulate an object, right? Works with objects, not with people, but that is exactly what we try to do. And another thing that is very interesting is this systems idea itself might be only a perception. So if you don't believe that the idea of systems might be a perception, think about taxonomies, right? So we created structures to understand the world, but structures, they do not exist in reality, right? And then, you know, biology also explained that not even, you know, the hierarchy and the inheritance exist. In fact, so when we developed hierarchies in object orientations, was the great failure in software development because it didn't work at all, right? So, but we spent 20 years trying to create that revolutions was called object-oriented design. That's not, I'm not surprised about that. So in order to understand first that the concept of systems, it's useful. It's useful for us because we tend to understand what's going on. And if we want to use coaching, which is a great discipline, a great, you know, idea that we developed to genuinely help people moving forward, and we have a great experience doing coaching, we probably thought that, and is a great idea to bring coaching more into Agile, right? However, if we look about coaching now and we see where coaching comes from, it comes from the definition of very simple things as well. So it's a very well-defined discipline that we come up with to help someone go somewhere, right? Like a coach. We help people go somewhere. And then, you know, we work on mindset, we work on limiting beliefs, we work on overcoming obstacles and hurdles. It's absolutely fine. But if you see the analogy between, of course, systems, you can see now that moving to the right, we start understanding that there are more, you know, kind of a human systems that are governing by different kind of forces that sometimes are totally chaotic. We cannot understand why they work in that way. One reason why I'm saying this is if you have a look at the systems approaches on this slide, you will notice that on the bottom there are three things: purposive, purposeful, and unpurposeful. Well, purposive things are things and objects that are made, you know, for a purpose, and we put there because we need them. These objects, we need the other object, other artifacts or systems or whatever we think about, some kind of idea that we absolutely need in order to you know, reach our goals or our intent. Purposeful things is the way how we start differentiating between things, objects, artifacts, structures, methods, workflows, and intentions of human beings. And sometimes we you know, we've been caught in confusion because what we do is, oh, that was not my purpose. I mean, my intent was slightly different, but I ended up doing something wrong. So it's a very difficult thing, especially because when you want to identify purpose, you often don't realize that the purpose might be hidden by complexity and might be not the same purpose. One of my workshop when I help people creating, you know, during the first stages of team building, there are exercises, particular exercises to help you to define your purpose, right, or find your purpose as a team. But we also explain that your purpose as a person is different than the team purpose, and is different than the company purpose, and cannot be different than that, right? So it's kind of a mess, isn't it? And unpurposeful things, it's totally chaotic. So are kind of things that they work, they happen. There's a lot of things, but without a purpose behind. And then if you want to have the brilliant example in nature, just think about falling in love. It happens, and there is no purpose behind all of this, right? Now, unfortunately, falling in love is very close to a lot of activities that a human being do, right? So, and that's exactly the reason why we need systems coaching. Now, before we go any further, let me do another thing that might be probably useful at this point. If I ask you this other question on mentee. Let's see if you can now answer these questions. What drives your coaching questions? And what I mean by that, you are doing coaching, agile coaching, personal coaching, executive coaching, anything that you have, you're helping someone. What drives your questions? When you would think about the questions, what do you think? What is your source of inspiration? What are your drivers? Or what kind of, step usually? Source, goal, intention. Nice. Let's see if we can find something else. Uncover the problem, source, intention, collaboration, goal. The answer being, we see, lead the coachee, the situation. Uncover the problem. I like that one. Lead the coachee. A systems and systemic coaching class does not have only, of course, unconventional methods. For instance, we talk about hard system thinking, we talk about soft system thinking, but the value of doing that kind of study in a class is because you have to realize and connect the dots between coaching and systems thinking. You have to realize and connect dots between soft system methodology and human system behaviors. You have to realize what happens when you recognize patterns. You have to realize what are the archetypes that are behind certain patterns. So all of these means that systems and systemic coaching, just to keep it short, it's yes, using unconventional methods like and principles like focusing on time, on place, on exchange, understanding, of course, what human system behavior means. But all of those methods gives you more orientation. So in what drives your coaching, right? Your coaching questions, you put in there everything, but most of our idea comes from coaching and agile. How did we change? How can we change the world if we only use the same mindset? I'm not saying that create the issue and the problem, but systems and systemic coaching is an extension of coaching and agile coaching, if I may, in the directions that expand and change what we can call our coaching range. So it's a way to expand our knowledge and the way how we think and our thoughts. So I don't want to get you bored more listening about theory, but I want you to try something like that, because I thought maybe if we give it a shot with a simple exercise, it might be even better than just waste a lot of time talking and talking. And I prepared a mural board that I'm going to share with you. And the mural board is this one. Now I can see you joining the mural board. But before we start, I want to just understand one thing. So the exercise that I want you to experience today is kind of a coaching similar to what I have done with this executive. The only difference is we are going to use mural instead of using physical objects, right? So why mapping? And why mapping can be an incredible way to change your coaching style and the way how you do coaching. So traditional coaching is focusing on conversation, and then that's fine. But we can find different ways to use the concept of a system that, even if it doesn't exist, it's an idea that we have in mind and helps us to conceptualize or understand what's going on and the complexity. Perhaps the way how we see the systems is not the way how the other persons see the systems and other persons see the system, right? So what we want, have a closer look at the idea that we have in mind, and then trying to understand and get more close with our client. So for this exercise, and now I can share the board and the instructions that you will find here on the board. In the meantime, I use the laser point just to show you where this text is located, but they are next to each single table. So this is a facilitator cheat sheet, so which means that it's a very basic guideline and works in this way. I will bring you in breakout rooms in pair. One of you will be the client, so one of you should bring on the table the issue and the problem. Might be if you are working on a project, I'm working with a project manager or a product owner, or there is this Scrum Master is try to solutionize every time, and then whatever probably you want to bring on the table is fine. The other person, your colleague, would be the coach. And the coach now, if you are expert in coaching, I will leave you on your own, but actually just follow these simple instructions. And the instructions are the following things. The first one, ask the client to pick one object. Now, what kind of object? As you can see at the left of each single table, there are objects to the side. And I will show you, please, how it works. So with an example, let me move here on this table. So for instance, I'll take one object here. Of course, the table can be made bigger. And I'll say, well, the first object represents yourself. So this is the client. I am the client, and I choose this object. I want to position this object here, and I want to orientate my head towards the center of the map. So for me, this is me. And then the table symbolize or conceptualize actually the place where I am. For me, makes sense the problem, and the problem is happening right now. At that point, the coach will ask other questions. Say, okay, could you please bring in other elements that might be relevant for you? So like, this is again, I have to go really by dragging and drop what I think. I think this is the Scrum Master. This is the project manager. This one should be another person. And the link is not really that necessary. That's fine. And at this point, I see this person very distant from me and very big because he's very influent and powerful. This other one is next to me in this position right here. Now, at this point, the coach can ask other questions, say, what does that mean? And then can you tell me a little bit more about your feeling? Try to ask any questions that seems natural for you. Now, the next step, once you conversate for a little while, I will give you in total 20 minutes for this entire conversations. One, probably you have disposed all the object on the table and everything is there. And then you asked about feelings, what's going on, and then the client, revealed actually the complexity of the system. At that point, the coach asked one simple question, said, well, if you could move these objects towards the better, how does it look like? What would be the next shape? And maybe at this point you will find that the client said, well, ideally, if this person will be exactly in the middle, for me, it would be fantastic, and I would love to have a small shape of this person here and maybe myself. And at this point you can ask other questions, say, okay, what do you need to move in that position? Or what's happening right now? What are you feeling now? What are your perceptions? Now, this is not a training class. We cannot teach, of course, the systemic principles and many other reasons. But what I want you to notice is how many things you can bring into play and in action, just thinking differently. I think, with different perspectives. So.
And Michelangelo, do me a favor. Can you repeat what you said when we were not recording about the capture of the different stages, just in a couple of minutes while waiting people joining back?
Yeah. So essentially, when you do a table mapping, and then here we have a particular scenario, a situation. This situation and the map represents the current status, or what the client visualize. Representing the current status. Then the coach can work with the client to help him improving the scenario, improving the situations, maybe having some movements, say what would be the next step to make this system better, right, or more healthy. And the client start visualizing the future, but also understanding what he or she really wants, and then make some movements, moving objects, right? And then once you create a stable or balanced scenario that works for the client, you can take another snapshot. So you will have, in the end, a series of snapshots every time that you make some change to the map. And this will tell you exactly, it's a sort of storytelling about, your future, how you want to make this happen. Another interesting part is that you can take a look at these pictures maybe in a year, in 6 months, a year. And then so you can see, well, was the scenario at that time, right? Many things happened. And you can compare, of course, your perceptions, how perception changes. Okay, I think we can close breakout rooms right now, and people will come back.
Yeah, we'll close in 1 minute.
Yeah, in a minute.
And during the training that you are arranging next week, we will have this kind of interaction simulation during
yes,
the
exactly. The training is divided in four parts, in 4 lessons, and in one of the lessons we tackled particularly systemic coaching and constellations. But in addition to the experience that we have done today, we will add other things like understanding the systemic principle in more deeply, and understanding the sequence more deeply, and what kind of question you can ask particularly to make this map more effective, right?
Yeah. So you can read them. Okay, fine.
And alongside other exercises, a lot of other exercises.
7 seconds. Good.
There he goes. Right back. Okay.
Yeah, people are joining.
Time traveling is always fun. Thank you very much, guys. Sorry for the inconvenience of having the map moving back and forth. I tried to fix, and then I know what happened. Sorry again. So I hope you had a pleasant experience. Would you like to share something about the experience that you have done about this way of doing coaching, mapping? And I will add something maybe in the end.
I can go first if you like.
Yeah, thank you.
Please.
From my perspective, so I was the coachee. I found using the table and the objects to describe the experience and make it visual for the others. I found it very interesting and useful, a very good conversation tool. But at the same time, it actually made me realize how I feel about the actual situation. So yeah, it was really great to express feelings and background.
Thank you for
really
sharing.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you for sharing. And of course, the more you know the systemic principles, maybe not only from systemic coaching and constellations, because this is only one of the tools that you can explore, you can understand maybe how to ask different questions, more complicated questions, or questions more close to the issue, the core of the issue, right? Thank you very much. Anybody else that want to share? Marianne?
I was the coach, and it was really engaging. I usually start or tend to start conversation by relating to what the other party is going through. So kind of like acknowledging that the situation, you come across it on regular basis. It's not really something that is very, very overly complicated or very unique, or you didn't hear about it before. And the questions, when you start asking the questions, it's a little bit challenging to stay a bit kind of like general, but at the same time you want to get to the bottom of the problem. So the questions were really engaging, and I loved asking them. However, at some point in general, I find asking questions, I don't know, it can be a little bit challenging to ask the questions to get to the bottom of the problem.
Yeah,
so
it's always challenging, asking questions, and then, it's never-ending experience as coaches, and this is common with the other style of coaching as well. And one thing, as I said, discovering more about other principles that might be underlying the issues and the problems can help you, Because most of the time we have an idea from the traditional coaching that we studied, from, and then we think that maybe that kind of focus, it's enough. But then when we understand more about, kind of different phenomenology related to issue and people, we can maybe ask simple questions and do the client do the rest of the work, right? One thing that I didn't explain to you, because of course this is not a training class, that you can take a snapshot about your map and then think about taking another snapshot once you ask the questions. So at that point, you can probably imagine after movements, what could be the best scenario for your client? And think about reviewing the map after a year, maybe, right? What's the perceptions, how the perception changed, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Yeah, Femi, please. Thank you.
Yes, I have some observations. So it's very much a case of, I believe, making visible. It's like some of these principles around like Lego Serious Play, etc. And actually, I know this is a digital environment, but people, if they have things that they can do with their hands and be creative, they then tend to let go of perhaps some more of their formatted thinking and can move things around. So you could have, I don't know, a chessboard without all the pieces, on the side, and you could just start moving things around, whatever. But through that, it's a way of having a conversation, making things transparent, and allows the recipient of the coaching, I guess, to start experimenting with ideas in a visual way. So I guess it's a further extension of what you're seeking to do in the verbal space. But actually, this allows for a lot more creativity and play, and then innovation, and just playing around with scenarios. So in my mind, it wouldn't be a dynamic, so it wouldn't be a static thing, it'd be a dynamic thing. I think that's what you're referring to in terms of the picture, a way of understanding how you saw the situation at one point and when you've got more information. So basically following TIA, right? Transparency, make it transparent, get them to inspect, adapt, move things around.
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely. And this is, of course, only one kind of exercise that you can do, right? The different ways of doing coaching. Because in general, as I explained to you, what you do in doing systemic coaching, it's an opportunity for expand your coaching range, right? And adding, of course, different perceptions and coaching, understanding the different perceptions that other people they have about situations, right? Cool. Anybody else before we finish? Because I think already we are out of time, maybe.
Yeah, there is not a time, but
there is not.
It's about the patience of people joining the session.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Michelangelo, I would say. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think this was a long but very interesting session. Okay, so I hope to see you in our next event in November. As you have seen in the chat, you can find all the references for being in contact and be in touch. So thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, very much, guys.
Thank you, Michelangelo, for the generosity.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.